In studio here from Erie Events, the CEO, Gus Pine. Gus, grab that microphone, pull it right nice and close, just like you're one of your big artists that you show up here. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were just talking about that. I think it's been maybe 2 years since
I think so. Yeah. Well, welcome back. And I just feel like there's so much going on with Erie Events. And so let's first off share about kind of from your 30,000 foot view as the CEO, talk about some of the things that you've been doing to kind of boost, your staffing and, kind of some new strategies here. Then we'll talk about the venues, you know what I mean?
Yeah, actually staffing's a good place to start because when I took over a couple of years ago, that was one of the things I wanted to look at. We, at the time, one of the objectives I had was to grow our reach to potential ticket buyers. And so one of the positions we added was a director of marketing. We had a marketing coordinator at the time. That's been fantastic for us. It's a lot of times we feel we don't sell shows because we're not getting the word out. I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, I didn't know so-and-so was coming." So
right.
that was a big indicator for me. Another position that we added was business development, and essentially what that is our interaction with our potential sponsors. We have huge reach when it comes to working with potential corporate sponsors, and we actually added that this year. So we have a better interaction. Previously, that was handled from the executive director's seat, and that's just hard to do. Those corporate interactions, they take a long time. They take a lot of interaction, and it's very difficult to do in addition to all the other things that I do. So we've added that.
How does that work? How would a corporation get value and add value to the venues themselves? Because you think about the Otters, they sell the advertising half the time, and so do the Seawolves and so on. How does that work when you're the venue guy?
Yeah, there's probably two examples I think of right out of the gate. The first would be our relationship with Gannon.
Okay.
Gannon came on I think it was a year ago, maybe close to 2 years ago. It was pretty much when I started. We have a great relationship with them, but they're the sponsor of our club level.
Okay.
So they get the coverage from Otters game, but they get recognition and they get eyeballs on their brand every time we have something in the arena. A second one would be Country Fair. We just did one of the venues that we added. We do event management for all events at Liberty Park now.
Okay.
That concert that we just did down there, the country concert on May 7th with Rodney Atkins, was presented by Country Fair.
Oh, fantastic.
Right. So,
right there at Liberty Park, right?
Yeah, Country Fair had their trade show at the convention center, and they wanted to do something special for their staff. So we said, well, how about we do a concert? You all get the VIP hospitality tents, and if you help to present the artist, we'll be able to offer a very low-cost ticket to the community, which they love because they get recognition within the community, rightfully so. So ended up selling over an additional 2,000 tickets for that, and thank God the weather. We were all iffy on the weather. May 7th's a little early to be doing outdoor, and that was actually our first non-8 great concert.
Yes,
somebody was shining down on us that day because it got cold as it got late, but it was a really good day, and then the next day was dreary, so we missed it by one day. But those are a couple examples.
So that's truly important, and that sounds like, again, that's locals, right? Those are local people saying, we see value here, and we want to get our logos, we want to get our presence in front of the folks. And so
and then the nice thing for us as well, or for our potential sponsors, we have multiple venues. So as long as we're doing a good job and keeping the customers that come into our venues happy, it's real easy to sell those sponsorships because somebody's coming in and they're either celebrating something in our building or they're coming to be entertained. They're always in good moods. So it makes it real easy to sell. Obviously, we've got to do our end of things, but for a potential corporate sponsor, you can be in multiple venues. So you can get in front of people who like the Philharmonic. You can get in front of country fans. You know, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So we were talking about staff, and so you've got marketing, you've got kind of that corporate connection. I've always been impressed with rank and file. I mean, like, for example, we have this gem of a convention center. But it wouldn't be at the level it is without your people there that are just so friendly and so attentive to whatever's happening there, whether it's a wedding or a big conference or one of the shows like the RV show or something like that, you know?
Yeah, and I've noticed that. I appreciate that you say that, and I 100% agree with you. When I moved into the role as director, any plan I had for growth was 100% reliant on the capabilities of our team. I can come up with a great idea, or I can collaborate with our internal team and come up with something similar to partnering with the Port Authority to manage events at Liberty Park and do actual ticketed concerts in the summer outdoors. I can't do that without a great team.
Yeah.
And everything from production, food and beverage, to hospitality sales, all of that, I can't handle any of that. In fact, once the deal's done, I step back and it's all up to that team. And you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm glad you noticed it as well.
Well, and I would imagine that you get feedback because you got, let's say we're talking the RV show or we're talking the home show. Those vendors, do a lot of shows, right? And they're like, we love coming to Erie. I hear that all the time because I'm at all these shows, right, representing Talk Erie. They love coming to Erie because of, the attention that they get, the attention to detail, the attention to quality. I mean, that's a difference maker when push comes to shove and the optometrists want to figure out where they're going to have their convention. They choose Erie. The week, of course, was perfect. The weekend of the eclipse.
The
right?
eclipse. That's right.
Right.
I'd like to say that was originally planned. That was God's intervention or something. I don't know.
That's fantastic.
You're right. I think we had talked previously about the fact that we're not a must-play market. To some degree, even within the state, we're up in the northwest corner.
It's hard to get folks from Philly to come up there.
And I think our staff understands that. Obviously, it comes from the top down that we have to, service and hospitality have to be number one. But when you're not a must-play market, it's critical. When you convince people to come here, whether it's to one of our venues for an event or whether it's a conference planner at the convention center, their experience has to be top-notch. We factor in the fact that we have to be better than everybody else there, so that we have to give them a reason to not rebook. And I think our team has done a good job of taking that and making it part of our culture. And they execute it well, and part of it is hiring the right people too. Yeah. I mean, there's a hospitality mentality within our industry is critical, and it starts with at the top setting that as the goal, and then it's hiring for it as well.
I don't want to pour it on, but I mean, it's an important point because let's face it, post-COVID, we've reached some kind of a new normal where you almost don't expect good service. And so when you see it, you're like, wow. And it makes me wonder, what's it like to work for Erie Events? And do you have any openings? I mean, let's go right there, Gus, because it's a good place to work, I would think.
It is. And we've actually grown. When I started with the organization in 2000, at the end of 2016, we had 35 full-time employees. We now have 70.
Oh, wow. Doubled.
And some of that growth was obviously when I was general manager at the convention center, but it's doubled. And it's going to continue to grow as, like I said, we've added Liberty Park. Currently, we have full-time positions available. ErieEvents.com, we've got a page there that lists all the positions that we do have available. We're always looking for good people that fit the mindset that I described earlier.
Yeah.
But your comments I appreciate that.
Well, it is. I mean, you're competing for good employees these days, right? Especially in the hospitality space.
Yeah, and the hospitality industry was hit hard after COVID. A lot of people, out of necessity, left the industry because you simply could not go to a restaurant. You couldn't meet in a venue like the convention center for a long time. Those people still had to make a living, so many of them left the industry, perhaps found a different path. So when we came out of COVID, it was extremely difficult to find staff. And in fact, it's even in the culinary side of things, that's still difficult. I talked to some of our tenants. We have restaurants that rent space within some of our properties, and they still struggle to find kitchen staff. So it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah, probably going to have to build on all of that. We're talking to Gus Pine here. He's the CEO at Erie Events, otherwise known as the Convention Center Authority. We're going to get into some of the venues, but I think after the break, I want to talk about some of the proposal with the Erie Zoo, and we'll see how we could chat about that, because that's an interesting proposal for sure. You are tuned to Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. We've got Gus Pine with us from Erie Events. And Gus, in the paper, also through our conversation that we had with the zoo, the big news is that a conversation of and deliberation about the city handing over the Glenwood Park and the zoo to Erie Events to kind of stabilize and revigorate the zoo proper here. Can you kind of give us, from your point of view, kind of the beginnings of that conversation and where that's at right now?
Yeah, the conversations with our organization started about year and a half ago, and it started with the zoo. And the zoo approached us and asked if we would consider some level of collaboration or partnership with them. And then they proceeded to lay out their current situation. And I mean, it's dire.
Yeah.
The zoo's 100 years old this year. The struggle with the zoo, it's not dissimilar to our other assets, where these types of facilities are not built by private entities because they are not built for profit. They are built to create community good. And that's the case with the zoo. So the zoo operates on a subsidy. Mm-hmm. The problem is there has been no funding source for the zoo. They were able, through COVID, I think they were able to get some federal funding and some state PPP funding. Right, exactly. So, but they're dipping into those reserves on an annual basis. So there is a strict timeline to where the zoo likely will no longer exist without some other structure in place to support them. So we took that information and we looked at, does it make sense, the type of venue that the zoo is, does it make sense within our family of venues to fold that in to the Convention Center Authority? And we thought that it does. It's a community asset, it's a cultural asset, all the things our other venues are. And then we looked at our financials. Would we be able to, understanding that there's going to be some level of both operational investment as well as future investment to take the zoo back to accreditation, because through this process, being starved of funds, the zoo ultimately lost its national accreditation, which has all sorts of implications for them. They're not able to participate in animal trade. They're not able to build new exhibits.
And the zoo told us that it wasn't necessarily that the facilities were so bad. They definitely needed to upgrade their veterinary. They have that $10 million project for that. But it was really more the funding structure was an anathema, basically, to the AZA. Like, they have never seen this before. Zoos across the country get 30 to 40% of their income directly from government subsidies.
Exactly.
And we get like 5% here.
Exactly. And that ultimately, when we looked at it, we said, well, our organization is funded through bed tax.
Yeah.
All right. And that's essentially it's a tax on somebody coming in as either a tourist or a conventioneer. The nice thing about that structure is that it's not on the local taxpayer to fund that, because in those examples that you give, that's typically what happens. It's within a city or a county budget, and even in those situations, it makes sense because it's a community asset. Mm-hmm. The thing we liked about our proposal was that these would be the success of the zoo and the future of the zoo would rely on visitor taxes. So there's no burden put on local taxpayers, either county or city. So we created a proposal. We presented that back in October. We had some very specific parameters that we originally laid out. We want to be successful with the venues that we currently operate. We have the ability to be flexible and to be able to make decisions quickly, to be able to make improvements to the venue, whether it's physical improvements. I don't envision a world where, I mean, if your listeners think of, you wouldn't rent a house and you wouldn't be responsible to put a new roof on that house.
Right.
So how can we not own the property and make substantial $1 million investments into that property without having an ownership stake in it? It simply wouldn't make sense.
It sounds, from the coverage in the newspaper or what have you, some of the responses have been less than enthusiastic. And part of me understands that because the city once owned all these assets, the airport, a lot of different things, water authority, and has had to sell them through the decades just for the city to survive. And this would be one more asset that they would be giving away. Yeah,
and it makes sense, but I think it makes more sense to think of it as a partnership.
Yeah.
While there's not direct ownership of that property, it's creating a plan that saves it for city and county residents. And I think leaders are put in place to make difficult decisions. Every single item can't come to a referendum vote. That's why we vote for people on every 4 years, and I think it is a bold move. And as I said in the article today, we would applaud a solution as it comes up. If there's another organization that has a plan, or if the city has a different direction, we would applaud that, because we don't want to see this go as a community asset. And quite honestly, we don't want to see the ice rink go, and we don't want to see the park go, and we don't want to see the golf course go as well. Those are all community assets. It's a zero-sum game to save one and eliminate the other.
Right.
So that would not be our intention, but that's where we stand right now. I mean, we presented a proposal because I think we almost as an organization feel an obligation based on how we're funded and what our role is within the community to try to make sure that we don't lose these critical assets. This is a 100-year-old asset to the community. I talk to people anecdotally. They would hate to see the zoo go away.
No doubt.
And we feel the same way.
No doubt. So where does it stand? What are we hearing from city council and so on?
Well, my hope is a lot of the conversations, if they're happening, are happening between the Zoological Society and the city.
Okay.
It's really not. We're not advocating for us. We simply presented something. We're very open to a dialogue. If the city and the zoo want to sit down and have more conversation about the specifics of what an agreement would look like, we're certainly open to that. But we're not in a position to advocate for some specific role that we play. We're simply stepping up, raising our hand, and saying, as we see it, if not us, who?
Right.
But we have to be asked ultimately. And I think I'm encouraged that as I had conversations with city council members and the administration, that they feel the same way. They don't want to see the zoo go. I think their constituents are telling them the same thing. So I'm optimistic that there will be some conversations. The challenge is, quite frankly, that presentation was in October. That's 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And every month is another nail in the coffin, quite honestly, and to be frank, for the future of the zoo. If we're going to get involved, my plan would be to try to create a plan for 2026. We start our budgeting process in June and July. We set ourselves up for success. If we're going to be making substantial financial investments and then working with them for a more tactical, strategic plan for the future, we need to start that process sooner rather than later.
Talking to Gus Pine here about the zoo. I've got to go to the bottom of the hour break, but I would imagine CRIS is highly important, highly crucial part of this whole thing. Stay with us. More ahead here on Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show, live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here. And we're talking to our neighbors. You know, we're in the middle of the EDDC flagship footprint, but just down the block a little ways, a couple blocks away, you have the entertainment district of Erie, and Gus Pine is from Erie Events, and so we're talking the Warner Theater, the Erie Insurance Arena, UPMC Park, and of course the Convention Center and more to come, and of course your programming of Liberty Park. Let's talk about Liberty Park next as we go through the venues here. And you mentioned that we had a concert just last week, right?
That's right. Rodney Atkins. Yep.
Yeah, and that went well, huh?
Went great. The weather cooperated. We had a great turnout. It was actually our first. As I've heard history that there's been some ticketed concerts.
It's been tough though
in the past.
It's not an easy thing to ticket, you know.
It is, and we actually spent last year. We worked with the Port Authority, and I give the Port Authority a lot of credit because this is a straight collaboration with the port. The Port Authority, for many years, operated Acre, and if you think about the mission of the Port Authority, it is very different than running events.
Yes,
and that's all we know. So they had approached us, and we said, well, let's take a year. We'll manage portions of the event, and we used last year to bring our security director in, to bring our staff in, to see the back workings of how that works. So we felt really confident when we came into this year that signing an all-in event management agreement made a lot of sense for us, and this worked great. We have the announcement out for Acre Tuesdays. We'll be operating that. And you
guys were involved with getting Todd Rebich to be the lead, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. We had a relationship with him. Actually, he's a huge supporter of the Otters, so we knew him from that relationship. And the naming rights deal was coming to an end. Mm-hmm. And he jumped in with both feet, and he was actually there, and he was pleased to see that venue used as it should be used. I mean, we have an outdoor venue in Erie that we look at it as event managers and say, well, why aren't we using this at least 3 or 4 times a year and getting people out overlooking the bay with a sunset coming down and a band playing? It's just, there's so much opportunity out there.
So you're going to be managing Acre, that's out there, and a few more ticketed events for 2025, you think? Or?
Yeah, we've done this one. We've got holds right now.
Okay.
In lingo is we've got offers in to artists, and we're working with a promoter. And again, that's that co-pro deal where we're partnering with a promoter out of Pittsburgh. We've got offers into 6 acts. Now they come and go, but I think my hope is we'll at least do 2 more, perhaps 3 more before end of September. You know,
a lot of us have been to Blossom Music Center or Station Square, or thinking of Darien Lake, where it is Art Park. You've got this situation where you go to shows at amphitheaters, and so do you get a sense that maybe that Liberty Park could become like a mini one of those type of things? I mean, it's not as huge as,
I do. Actually, the capacity out there is 4,000.
Yeah.
And we can do 15 hospitality tents. So you can have corporate sponsors or individuals who want to rent out a tent. So you can get a decent amount of people out there. The interesting thing about the entertainment industry in the summer, these artists are on tours that are all outside. So their production setup is built for outdoor plays. It's part of the reason why we don't typically get a lot of summertime activity either at the Warner or the Arena. Mm-hmm. So this fits in nicely with what artists are looking for. And ultimately, we look at that. You say a mini version. There's a potential in the future as we look at utilizing funding like the CRIS funding, which I know we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
As we look to make improvements to infrastructure on the bayfront, that property fits within the CRIS, and so that amphitheater could really be taken to a whole nother level.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, that's cool. Let's go to the Warner Theater. And again, we cut the ribbon a couple years ago now.
Yep.
At the brand new facility, rehearsal hall, new dressing rooms. It's absolutely gorgeous, and now it's been activated. You guys have, from Blippi to Pat Benatar, it's like there's something a couple times a week up there. Seems like.
Yeah, we've this month it seems like we've got 3 shows a week. Our staff down there is doing a great job.
Yeah.
We did last year, I just looked at the numbers. We did over $2 million in event revenue for the first time ever at that venue. Quite honestly, it's easy to sell because from an artist perspective, it's a great venue. And now because of the back of house, a lot of those improvements that were made, we kept the 95-year-old theater looking like it did in its heyday, which was important. But the improvements were made back of house. So now, instead of loading shows into basically a man door, similar to the door that I walked in to come in here, right. you now can back 2 semis in and unload a show properly. So and then of course the dressing rooms were all redone. We've added several dressing rooms. So yeah, it's a phenomenal
I can't even
experience.
imagine what it needed, like just on a pure power basis. If you remember the old lighting board, that was in the back, and things like that. I mean, I'm talking about before any of the original renovations.
Yeah, we have that we have it on display.
Oh, you do? Okay.
We have it on display in the rehearsal hall upstairs.
Yes.
We took that old panel out and kept it. That people can see it. Again, it's just a reminder of it's an homage to the past.
Yes.
And you look at that and you figure how I think 3 people ran that, and it's a huge board. I don't know how 3 IATSE members were able to run that thing, but it took a lot of skill.
That's remarkable. So the plan is that, again, you're working with promoters to just bring more concerts in, and now, or other events, and now you have the Broadway Theater League is really able to kind of do the full gamut of their offerings, right? There's no limitations like there used to be.
That's
with
right.
The proscenium and so on.
That's right. There we could house any Broadway show that's out there now, and that's been a critical move. Now, actually, I had mentioned before we added our business development position. One of the struggles that we had, quite honestly, with our Broadway presenter presents shows in about 6 cities across the Northeast. Mm-hmm. There's nobody that works for that organization that's in Erie. So when we created our business development position, we put some of the responsibility on that person to help with group sales, season ticket sales, because without somebody on the ground, it's very difficult to get information out from our Broadway presenter to schools, to local theater groups, to senior living centers, all things that the Erie Philharmonic does very well because they're located here. And really, to their success, I've looked at that and said, if the Philharmonic can do it, which is fantastic, why can't we increase patronage for Broadway as well? Sure. I mean, there's a very broad audience potential for Broadway.
There's no doubt.
And what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to grow that audience base to be able to convince a show that's going to sit down for, the Hamilton sits down in Cleveland for a month. Now, we would be looking for a week for a big show like Hamilton or Les Miserables.
Hamilton and Erie? I mean,
I can imagine it. Yes.
Yeah, it would. They would sell a week out, I would think.
They would. But I think our plan is to say we think we want Broadway long term, and we think there's an appetite for that. But we're here to help. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar to that co-pro. We're not necessarily jumping in on the deal, but we're saying we're here. We live here. We know the players. We know the organizations that potentially could buy tickets. Yeah. And we'll point a staff person to help with that process. For years the narrative was saying that you can't do rock shows in Erie. Only country seemed to sell, and
you've turned that on its ear, especially lately with the Lou Graham and the Pat Benatar shows, right? Those were pretty successful.
They were very successful. Pat Benatar, and I heard she put on a fantastic show. I've heard from several people that I think she's better than she was in the 80s, quite honestly.
Wow.
But yeah, the fact that we're co-promoting, it gives promoters the ability to take a little bit of a risk. Since we're jumping in and we're saying if the show potentially loses money, we're gonna be a backstop for you. Mm-hmm. What that does is it gives a level of it gives confidence to the promoter that they can take a chance on bringing a show to Erie. And it additionally helps us. The more shows we bring, the more we know about our audience within Erie. So if a show sells well, we know that we need to bring more types of music like that.
Yeah, the Philharmonic obviously is the anchor at the Warner, and they just seem to be hitting on all cylinders. They have their new managing director there that Thomas is doing very well. Just a lot going on there.
I give the Phil a lot of credit. I mean, they from top down, whether it's marketing or coming up with unique shows to bring in. Their pop series, which I think attracts a younger audience. They actually moved that from 1 show to 2 shows just last year because it was so popular. Mm-hmm. They continue to push the envelope to be able to grow, and I think if you don't continue to do that, if you don't change, life will pass you by. And they've embraced that. I give them a ton of credit.
Let's jump over to UPMC Park. It sure doesn't hurt to have the Seawolves win back-to-back Eastern League championships.
Yeah, I called Casey after the first one, and because they were here for 25 years
right.
and no championship, and I said, "What took you so long?" Yeah, so I took more credit than I deserved because I deserve 0 credit for that, actually.
right.
Yeah, and actually, it's important to note that. When minor league baseball or Major League Baseball was doing a contraction of and you might have done stories on this.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of cities lost their minor league parks, and our organization, led by Casey, renegotiated that deal, made tremendous commitments from a capital standpoint to invest not only in the field but in locker rooms and all the things that are important to keeping a team. And it was very close at one point, and we were able to save that team. And then, of course, two years later, we're back-to-back champions, and even the Detroit Tigers are doing well, in large part because of all the players that are coming up from Erie.
There's no doubt. Well, and you gotta tip your hat to the state, saying, okay, we're gonna be there too. With the capital investments that we needed there. I mean, we went from turf that one of the Tiger coaches was mocking to this amazing best-in-class facility. And you got to remember, too, that their market area is only 3/4 of what, let's say, Bowie has, or, one of the bigger areas where they can market, in all 360 degrees around them. We can't sell baseball tickets to fish.
That's right. Yeah, that's fish don't buy tickets. That's we say that in our organization.
I bet you do. It's remarkable, and what a glorious place to watch baseball. I absolutely love it. And that's being activated too. They had a church service on Easter Sunday that was well attended.
I think they had an event for the solar eclipse as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, they do a great job. The team does a great job there. The Seawolves really operate that top notch.
Again, over at the Erie Insurance Arena, notice the new signage. Nice touch there.
Yeah, that was Erie Insurance did that as part of their 100th anniversary, and they updated that with their new logo, and they actually added a blade sign out front, which I think looks great.
It does. Yeah. The arena is getting more. It's getting busier, isn't it? Talk about that.
It is, and I think a lot of. We came out of COVID, and we were, we as a tertiary market were probably last in line to get shows. So coming out of COVID, a lot of the artists, there was such a pent-up demand for shows that it was easy to just fill Nashville, fill all the major markets. So I think it took a couple of years to get on the radar again, but I think that's coupled with our strategy, because I had phone calls with promoters And I had that conversation with them, and that's when we started talking about, if Erie's a risk, let us jump in on and be a backstop for some of that risk, and let's trust in our ticket buyers, and let's present shows here. We have huge pent-up demand to see shows in Erie as well, and that's why we got things like Teddy Swims and Bert Kreischer and all the artists that we've been getting over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and Nate Bargatze's going to the arena. He's at the arena.
Cole Swindell is coming, a big country artist coming this fall.
Is there a strategy? I mean, would it be helpful for the arena to have an additional sports team in there? Like, at one point you had arena football, Bayhawks basketball, and the Otters. That they probably ran into each other quite a bit. Is this easier just to deal with just the one team, or?
Well, it's easier. I think if it depends on who you're asking that question. If you ask our staff, doing basketball and hockey in the same season is difficult. You're putting basketball floor over ice. Now, all that to say, that doesn't drive our decision making.
Sure.
And the Bayhawks actually went away because of a very specific strategy within the National Basketball Association.
Right. The Pelicans wanted.
They're all next to, and in fact, Cleveland. I think their G League team plays in the same. They play at Rocket Mortgage, which is where the Cavaliers play.
That's really amazing. Yeah.
So it wasn't at any fault of ours.
Right.
But I would love to explore. Whether it's there's any number of sports. If there's an appetite within the community to support an additional team, that's fantastic. We'll look at that.
Right. Well, yeah, and again, it's a much bigger question than just whether the facility is available. It's the corporate sponsorships, it's the ticket sales. I mean, it's just a lot there.
Exactly, and it's somebody coming in because obviously there's going to be an owner of that team, and I haven't been approached at this point, but I'm certainly, if anybody's listening and they own a semi-professional or professional team and they want to bring it to the arena.
Yeah,
call
absolutely.
Me.
Well, and we and our hats are off to the Bayhawks. They had a good run there, and they that was a great product to put out.
It was
the folks there.
I miss it. They were playing when I first moved here, and there was actually I came here from Michigan, and there was a couple of guys from Michigan State that played on that team. There was great talent within that G League.
Gus Pine is with us. I've got maybe a couple minutes here, Gus. What should our listeners be looking for out of Erie Events, through the summer and into the fall? Again, 8 Greats is being run by you guys in cooperation with the Port Authority and so on.
Well, I would say pay attention to, and it'll take some digging perhaps, and maybe you'll do some shows on this, but the CRIS funding is going to be, it will be transformational for this community. And I mean, it not to go into detail, but specifically what that's going to mean is that tax dollars that are generated in Erie are going to come from Harrisburg back to our community within a specific 130-acre area and be reinvested into our community for new development projects and infrastructure as well.
Are all of your, in the entertainment district, is that entirely in the CRIS?
All of our venues are within the CRIS. I'm actually, right now I've got 2 or 3 studies to be able to look at things like expansion of the convention center, activating the space in front of the arena and the ballpark. I mean, to me, that if you go to a larger community, that space in front of venues like that is activated so that it can be used on non-game days, or it could be used as fan fests. I mean, it could be an outdoor ice rink. The sky's the limit. Because all of these fall within the CRIS zone, and those dollars are coming back to our community, it gives us the opportunity to look at things like this.
Yeah, it will give the fuel for the investments.
Well, exactly.
Something to watch. Gus Pine, CEO of Erie Events, thank you for taking the time, sir.
Thanks, Joel.
Good being with you. It is 6 minutes in front of 5.